similarity in terms of intelligence perspective, but this doesn't actually challenge human-chimp ancestry. Phil, you didn't make your point. You made a circular argument the whole time. You just made the same circular argument again and again.
I'm not going to have anyone in here. I'm not going to have my camera destroyed by this guy. We're going to finish. Okay? People can watch the video and make up their own minds.
We can discuss this again too. The fact of the matter is this. All throughout this conversation, you first did not want to acknowledge homology was an assumption, then you acknowledged it was an assumption, then you believed it could be verified. So in summary, what I began off with, you still haven't challenged, which is similarities is due to common descent, similarities exist, therefore similarities is due to common descent. This at best is circular reasoning. And I don't see why you're walking away, because you wanted to have this debate.
We have had the debate.
No, but Phil,
have we not been here for 2.5 hours?
Phil, the
Should
debate.
I be here till next Tuesday?
No, relax, Phil. When we wanted to have this discussion, you wanted to have a formal discussion. You said you had more credentials than Aaron Ra, which I don't know how you managed to make that conclusion.
I never said that. I said no. You lied. You lied. You said I only debate people that have professional qualifications in the field.
Yep.
Yeah, and I pointed out Aaron Ra doesn't have those qualifications.
He does.
No, he doesn't.
He studied paleontology.
He has not got any postgraduate degrees in the subject.
Wait, hang on.
Because I asked him. Me and Aaron
Okay,
Ra
so
had a conversation, and I
have you
asked,
studied paleontology?
have I? No.
What have you studied in terms of evolutionary biology?
I'm not qualified in evolutionary biology.
So where Aaron Ra is, because he studied paleontology.
He is. Well,
He's more qualified than you.
I asked him if he had professional qualifications in evolutionary biology, and he told me no.
It says on his Wikipedia page he studied paleontology.
I asked him, and he said no.
And he's been debating this topic for about 30 years now.
Right, so?
No, but your point.
If it was me versus you, this would be really interesting. But it isn't.
It's you misrepresenting the scientific community.
It's you versus the whole scientific community.
No, it's not.
It is.
Because which scientist, can you bring me one scientist or scientific paper or a philosopher of science or philosopher of biology who says homology is not an assumption you begin off with?
Okay, but
nobody.
You're missing the point, Suboor. The question is not what are the starting assumptions. The question is what does that...
Ah, you agree the starting assumptions are there?
I've already told you, right? The point that we have, the evidence confirms the human chip.
If the evidence is based on an assumption and the null hypothesis is something ridiculous,
okay,
and genetics adds nothing new to the conversation.
Okay, you're misquoting that again. The genetics, what he was saying was that the genetics adds nothing new to the issue of how similar humans and chimps are.
That's not what he said.
That's not the question.
That's not what he said.
The question is...
You're misquoting him.
The question is...
The whole
are
time
humans and chimps
you're misquoting him.
got a common ancestor. Totally different question.
You're misquoting him
I'm going
totally.
to finish it here, okay? You've got to put a line under it, okay? Thank you very much for the debate.
Okay. One of the issues is this. When you have atheists like Phil, like other atheists, they come along and they say, look, this thing is evidence. We have evidence from genetics. We have evidence from anatomy. We have evidence from the fossil record. We have evidence from bioinformatics, or we have evidence from biochemistry or whatever. But each of those is based on an assumption fundamentally, and that assumption is the assumption of homology. Now, if you want to say it's simply an assumption, that's fine. But if you say that this assumption is actually true, what you're basically doing is you're making a circular argument. You're saying similarities are due to common descent, similarities exist, therefore similarities are due to common descent. And that is pure circular reasoning. Now, if you want to say, look, there is something that can actually challenge it, and you want to say, look, we have this probability that's actually here. What is the null hypothesis? What is the thing that you're comparing it with? It's going to be randomness. But where did you come up with the idea that that is going to be actually random? So what he actually did there is he misrepresented what the scientific conclusion was by not explaining fully what the null hypothesis was and how they actually came up with that conclusion. And this is one of the fundamental problems when it comes to actually atheists. What they actually do is this: they give you a picture of the scientific community which is not true. There is not a single philosopher of science, there is not a single philosopher of biology, there is not a single evolutionary biologist that would deny methodological naturalism and that would deny homology as an assumption. And even if homology was not just simply an assumption, even if it could be validated in some way, homology is a necessary condition for human-chimp ancestry, not a sufficient condition. You actually have to have a mechanism, because Darwin's theory is not a theory about similarities, it's the theory of natural selection, how you can get from a monad to a man, how you can go from A to actually Z. You can't just simply make claims, and one of the things which atheists love to do is say, you've misquoted this person, when they themselves, like in this conversation, didn't even know what the person actually said. And the problem why this exists is because evolutionary biology has been hijacked by people who want to use it as a platform for trying to show why God doesn't exist, or atheism is true, or this actually undermines the existence of God. When anybody who looks at it from an objective point of view will understand science is based on the problem of science is based on induction, and you have the problem of induction. It's a beautiful method which gives us the technology that we have, but it doesn't mean that conclusions that you make based upon it, especially conclusions which are about the remote past, you can say these things are true in a certain way. The assumptions are still there, and those assumptions cannot be decisively proven through any form of data. Some of these things are philosophical paradoxes like homology and homoplasy, and these cannot actually be proven by data. Now, one of the things which is very, very important, and which is why I come to the park, is to show that atheists like Phil, they don't actually represent the scientific community, and they always give you partial evidence. And we saw clear evidence of that when he gave that statistic, but he didn't explain what the null hypothesis was, or what the null hypothesis was actually based upon, and tried to actually justify that. And he walked away. Now, somebody watching this may say, well, he has the right to walk away. Actually, anybody has the right to walk away from a debate, but he asked for this debate, and he actually wanted to discuss a very deep topic with all these different things, whether it's genetics, anatomy, or the fossil record, or whatever. But he called each one an independent line of evidence, but when one was dealt with, he ran off to another as an independent line of evidence. But that's like whack-a-mole. That's like, look, it's not here, it's here, it's not here, it's here. The fact of the matter is, it's nowhere. It's actually based on the assumption of homology, and there is no one piece of evidence that you can actually say is decisive evidence of human-chimp ancestry. And another thing which in the debate which came up, which I think is very, very important, which we should actually understand, is confirmation bias. Darwin actually had a confirmation bias, and his confirmation bias was that he believed the African people were closest to the other primates, which is why he believed certain traits about African people which weren't actually true. And Ernst Haeckel, who was a German evolutionary biologist, and he was one of the disciples of Darwin, and he was also somebody who wrote a book about human-chimp ancestry. He had a chart that he actually made with different types of human beings, with the African black human being the lowest and being closest to the actual other primates. Now, obviously the highest was the same race that Phil actually is, the Caucasian race. Now, when Charles Darwin read that book, he actually said, if I knew that this book was going to be published, I would not have published my book, The Descent of Man. So he clearly held those beliefs. Now, the atheist who was here, he's going to say, well, everybody was racist back then. You know, this is complete nonsense. And I explained that Islamically, we have an ancient tradition, which is that all human beings are equal, and the only thing that differentiates one human being from another human being is their God consciousness, not their race. So this whole idea that, oh, it's okay if he had this confirmation bias because everybody at the time was racist, that wasn't the actual point. The point is he let his confirmation bias dictate his actual scientific study, and this is the same case in Africa.